Hi, I'm Allison Jeraci here with Yoga International. Today I'm going to be showing you different ways to use a bolster adapted by an article by Lisa Kasmer. But before we get into these adaptations of how to use the bolster in an inversions practice, click subscribe, like this video so that you don't miss the next one. Okay, so let's get to it. Many times when we think of the bolster, we think of restorative yoga. We think of relaxation. But the bolster really is an underrated or an under-celebrated, as Lisa would say, use of the yoga bolster, because you really can use the bolster in all these different yoga postures that help us to get used to having our head on the floor, being in an inversion, and help you to support yourself as you're coming into these deeper practices. The first yoga pose that we're going to look at is Adho Mukha Svanasana, or downward facing dog. Grab your bolster, set your bolster up toward the front of the mat, and your hands will be on the outsides of the bolster. And what we're looking to do is to bring the hairline to the bolster. So I'll place my hands on the sides of the bolster. I tuck my toes under, lift my hips up, and then lower my head down, okay? And so for me, it's a relatively comfortable position where my head is placed here. So if you notice that your head is well above the bolster, so if I shorten my downward facing dog, now it's very hard for my head to reach. You could lift up the height of the bolster by placing another bolster or placing a blanket over the bolster. You could also make your downward facing dog longer, right? So if I walk my hands out, now my head really comes down into the bolster. Okay. And then to come out, you'll lower your knees and come back up. Okay. The next variation where we get used to putting some weight on our head is Prasarita Padottanasana, or a wide leg forward bend. So you'll stand up and open up your feet pretty wide, about 4, 4.5, maybe even 5 feet of distance between your feet, depending on the height of your body. And I like to place the bolster right in front of my hips because this is essentially where I want to fold from. So I'll push the bolster back towards my hips and initiate the fold from my hips, okay? And then once I'm there, let's say my pelvis stops there, I can pull the bolster out and rest my head here. But let's say my pelvis does fold a little bit more. Well, then I can take the bolster down and place my hands here, and maybe go even further and place my forearms on the bolster and release my head. Or I could take my head to the bolster. Okay. The other way that you could do this, right? You take your hands, place them on the hips to come up. You can stand on the bolster, okay? So if you want a little extra, so I'll take my feet all the way over to the outer edges of the bolster. So it'll give me maybe like 2.5 inches of height. Place my hands on my hips, and now I know where to initiate the fold from because I felt that before when the bolster was at the hips. I fold, and then release my hands down, followed by my head. And to come up, place your hands on your hips, and come on up with a long spine, okay? The third variation is Ardha Sirsasana, or half headstand. So in this pose, it's almost as if your bolster is like a plank. And so you'll walk your feet along the bolster. So I'll start with my knees on the bolster and my forearms come to the mat, okay? I interlace my hands, press my forearms against the mat, and place my head in between my inner wrists. Then from there, I lift my feet up, okay, or my knees up, and I step onto the bolster. So now you'll notice that I have an extra 2 or so inches of height. And I walk my feet up. If you don't feel secure here, you can always practice this with your back against the wall. To come out, I'll walk my feet down the plank, lower my knees onto the bolster, come up. You could even separate your knees, drag the bolster forward a little bit. And then you can come down into a restorative child's pose. So these have been a couple of variations that you can use a bolster that are absolutely not restorative at all whatsoever, but that do help to enhance your inversion practice or to get closer, more comfortable with an inversions practice. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let us know if you try any of these poses and how they go for you. Remember to like this video, click subscribe, and we'll see you for the next one. Thanks.